Edge of Eternities pre-release is here. It's Magic the Gathering in space. You know what that means? Pre-release is at your local game store. Now, viewers of this channel know how much I adore pre-release events. They're such a blast, and it's absolutely worth it to head down to your local game store to play in one or several. Pre-release events are a form of sealed tournament where you receive a pre-release kit containing 6 sealed packs of the newest set, as well as 1 promo card. Using this kit and as many basic lands, from your LGS's basic land station as you'd like, you'll build a deck of 40 cards to battle against other players who also built decks out of their pre-release kits. Now, if you have never attended a pre-release event, or maybe it's just been a while since your last one, you should check out our video explaining how to build a sealed deck, which will tell you everything you need to know as an absolute beginner. This video, however, will assume you do know how to build a sealed deck and you've probably been to at least one pre-release before, and instead it's going to focus on how best to build a sealed deck for Edge of Eternities. I'm going to cover everything you need to know to take your pre-release experience to the next level. I'll cover the set's mechanics, archetypes, and the key cards to be aware of when looking through your sealed pool. We'll even build a deck together, opening up this sealed pool. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Class is in session. There is a lot of information to parse when building a sealed deck from your pre-release kit, so I always recommend organizing your cards as you go. You can do this however you'd like, but personally, I like to separate my cards out by color, and then further separate the commons from the uncommons, rares, and mythics. I primarily do this because the uncommon cards are going to give me the strongest signal as to what sort of deck I want to build, so easy visualization is the key. Once you have all 6 packs grouped up like this, you can start to get a feel for what cards and colors you might be interested in playing. Looking at this pool, what is your first idea of what to build with it? I've linked the entire pool in this video description, and I'll show you what I'd build at the end of the video. But first, let's go over some of the brand new mechanics in Edge of Eternities. Understanding these mechanics and how strong they are in sealed events like pre-release will help you to evaluate the power level of your cards and decide which ones will end up in your 40-card deck. Now, before you look at any individual card in a new set, it's important to understand how the new mechanics in the set work. That way you know what you're looking at when you see a card that has one of the new mechanics. Station. Station is the latest ability in the crew saddle design space. Spacecrafts and planets are artifacts and lands, respectively, that have the ability Station. To activate a Station ability, tap another creature you control. Put charge counters equal to its power on the permanent with Station. Stations have abilities that get turned on once they get the requisite number of charge counters. Spaceships become creatures once they reach a stated number of charge counters, whereas planets will never become creatures. Station is a great way to break board stalls when you don't have good attacks, but still want to get use out of your creatures. It's important to note that creatures who are summoning sick can still put counters on stations, but since you can only station at sorcery speed, be careful that you don't tap so many of your creatures that you leave yourself dead to your opponent's attackers. Warp. Warp is an ability that's reminiscent of the fan-favorite Evoke mechanic from Lorwyn. Warp is an alternate casting cost on permanents that's usually less expensive than the card's mana cost. You may only cast a card for its warp cost from your hand. If you do, exile it at the beginning of the next end step, and then you may cast it from exile on a later turn. Effectively, this means you get the permanent for a single turn at a discount, and then later you can play it again for full retail. This is a good way to get a bit of value early in the game, but it is important to remember that Warp does not grant your creatures haste. So unless they already have haste, or you have some way to give the warped creature haste, you won't be able to attack with it before it gets exiled. Void. Void is an ability word that is similar to Revolt from Aether Revolt. To turn on Void, either a non-land permanent must have left the battlefield this turn, or a spell must have been warped this turn. Void cards tend to get stronger when Void is turned on. Sacrificing non-land permanents is an easy way to turn on Void, but you can also do so by casting a removal spell on an opponent's non-land permanent, or by sacrificing a lander token. Lander tokens. Landers are a new non-creature token in Edge of Eternities. Lander tokens are artifacts that can be tapped and sacrificed for 2 mana to search up a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. In other words, activating a Lander token is like casting a rampant growth. Archetypes. Despite the somewhat ramshackle nature of building a limited deck, limited set designers intentionally construct the format around specific archetypes for each color. As such, your 2-color pairs will be stronger the more they are built with a specific game plan in mind. If you're a new player or haven't paid much attention to preview season, it can be hard to determine what each color pair wants to do just by looking through your sealed pool. In this next section, I'm going to give you an overview of each color pair's best game plan and shout out a few key cards to keep an eye out for as you're looking through your packs. Blue-white decks are the double spell archetype for Edge of Eternities. Players who attended the Tarkir Dragonstorm pre-release will remember this mechanic as the flurry mechanic from that set, and it works the same way here. Cheap spells, spells that draw cards, and spells that bounce permanents you control back to your hand are all great ways to get your second spell each turn. The signpost uncommon is Station Monitor, a 2/2 lizard artificer for white and a blue that creates a 1/1 flyer that can only block other flyers whenever you cast your second spell each turn. This is a very powerful card. You can guarantee at least 1 trigger from Station Monitor if you have an instant to cast in the same turn as a second spell, so you can still get a flyer even if your opponent has a removal spell. In blue-black, you will be building an artifact-based control deck. Cheap removal, card draw, and evasive or resilient finishers are the name of the game for this color combination. The signpost uncommon is Alpha Rael, Dreaming Acolyte, a 3-mana 2/3 legendary human cleric that draws 2 cards when it enters. Then you have to discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact card. On your turn, Alpha Rael also has Death Touch, meaning he's a more useful attacker than blocker. There are a lot of artifacts in this set, 74 to be exact, and 41 of them are within the Dimir color pair. That means nearly 40% of all cards you could run in a 2-color Dimir deck are artifacts, and that's not even counting cards that make Lander tokens. In other words, don't stress too much about whether you have enough artifacts in your deck. There are plenty to choose from, and individual card quality matters a lot more than piling your decks full of artifacts. Cryogen Relic is a great card for this deck at common, while Monoist Circuit Feeder is nothing short of a mythic uncommon in this archetype. In black and red, you'll be building Void Sacrifice, a deck that's fantastic at enabling the Void mechanic. The signpost uncommon is Interceptor Mechan, a 4-mana 2/2 flyer that returns an artifact or creature from your yard to your hand when it enters play. At the beginning of your end steps, the Mechan also gains a +1/+1 counter if you've turned on Void during the turn. There are plenty of sack outlets in this set, but the most reliable is Umbral Caller Zealot, a 2-mana 3/2 that can sacrifice creatures or artifacts to surveil 1. Look for artifacts and creatures that either gain the bulk of their value when they enter play, or provide you with a nice benefit when they die, as these make the best sack fodder. Systems Override is another important card, as cards that steal things from your opponents for a turn are fantastic in tandem with sack outlets. Just as it was for Final Fantasy, the red-green deck in Edge of Eternities is another lands aggro deck. The signpost uncommon is Tanuk Memorial Ensign, a 3-mana 2/4 Kavu pilot that pings an opponent whenever you trigger landfall. If it's your second landfall trigger in the turn, you'll also draw a card. The primary way to get a second land drop in a single turn in this set is with Lander tokens, so make sure you're able to make plenty of those if you have Tanuk in your deck. Like I mentioned, this exact archetype was also red-green's thing in Final Fantasy Limited, and it played really poorly there. But Edge of Eternities is a different format, so that change in context will hopefully make the archetype a lot more successful here. The red-green deck is one that is very capable of splashing other colors. Most often, the color you splash will be blue, as blue-green is the other lands deck in the format. More on that in a moment. As is often the case, the green-white deck is a +1/+1 counters deck. The signpost uncommon is Halia Ascendant Cadet, a 3/3 legendary human soldier for 2 generic, 1 green, and 2 white mana. Whenever she enters or attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Also, whenever one or more creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Halia is a fantastic card, which makes me think the Selesnya deck will be a strong one in this archetype. Dawnstrike Vanguard is a phenomenal top-end card in this deck. While the double-striking Dual Sun Adepts is a great creature to stack your +1/+1 counters on. The mana costs on Halia suggests that your green-white decks will skew more towards white, with green being only a supporting color. As such, I recommend you avoid splashing a third color in this deck. The white-black color pair gets a new twist in Edge of Eternities by borrowing a page from Green-White's book, Going Wide. Flood the board with creatures and tokens, then swing in for a huge wave of hard-to-block damage using the Signpost uncommon Servandum the Lucent, a 4/4 Human Knight legend with lifelink and Death Touch. Seriously, if you open this card, go wide with white-black. Whenever he enters or attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and Death Touch until end of turn. Servandum is a phenomenal card, but to really make the most of him, you're going to want plenty of other creatures in play so that each time he triggers, you're getting a lot of damage out of it. Honored Knight Captain and Knight Luminary are the easiest ways to get that wide board, as both creatures show up with friends when they enter play. The mana cost on Servandum is awkward, as it's a heavy black card in a deck that will likely play a lot of white cards. Graveyards are back once again in black-green for Edge of Eternities, with the color pair being a graveyard-valued deck. The Signpost uncommon here is Siege Ship Broodtender, a self-miller and reanimation effect strapped to a 2-mana, 2/3 Insect Citizen body. Despite black-green's explicit graveyard theme, there's not quite as much graveyard synergy here as you'd expect. There are a couple reanimation effects, as well as some Raise Dead effects, but nothing on the level of Cloud of Darkness from Final Fantasy Limited. As such, this is a pretty low synergy color pair. You may want to splash red for Interceptor Meccan, the black-red Signpost uncommon, and Roving Actuator, 2 cards that make great use of the graveyard. But at the end of the day, I'm really going to say that this is an archetype that you probably want to avoid in your pre-release if possible. Sorry, Golgari fans, but this is not the set for you. If you're in blue-green, you're going to be building a ramp deck. Just plain, simple, classic ramp with a really cool uncommon, Biomechan Engineer, a 2-mana 2/2 that creates a lander token on entry and gives you a fantastic payoff for all the lands you'll put into play. Pay 8 mana to draw 2 cards and create a 2/2 robot. Unlike with red-green, the blue-green lands deck was an awesome one in Final Fantasy, and I suspect it will be great in Edge of Eternities as well. Galactic Wayfarer is a phenomenal common with great stats on top of the lander token it creates. Eusocial Engineering is a remix of the Chocobo Racetrack from Final Fantasy, though this one has a nice additional mode of a warp cost. Most of the time, the warp cost on Eusocial Engineering will play out like a bonus 2-mana 2/2 that you play on turn 3 before making a land drop, but you can also play it on turn 4, play a land, then crack a lander token to get a second 2/2. The blue-red deck is another artifact deck, but this one slants more towards aggression. The Signpost uncommon is Meninon. Don't say aren't you an English major when I'm mispronouncing Author's Exile, a 3-mana 1/3 Jellyfish Advisor legend with flying that grows a creature anytime an artifact you control enters. Menum is a very powerful card, as not only does it provide a great body to stack your counters on, but it can also spread that power and toughness around, giving it some resiliency against removal. Caveron Harrier is an awesome 1-drop in this deck, putting on a lot of pressure if you get to attack multiple times with it while repeatedly triggering all of your cards that care about artifacts entering play. Caveron Turbo Drone's haste-granting effect lets you get a hit in with your warp creatures before they exile themselves end of turn. And overall, this color combination and deck is probably one of the more powerful ones in this set. Red-White is the Station Double Tap deck, a really fun twist in this color pair that best maximizes stations, as there are several creatures which reward you for controlling tapped creatures at your end step. One such creature is Sammy, Ship's Engineer, a 4-mana 2/4 human artificer legend that makes 2/2 robots every time you control 2 or more tapped creatures on your end step. In addition to tapping your creatures to stations, you can also get tapped creatures the old-fashioned way. Good ol' attacking. Keep an eye out for creatures with abilities that make them tap too, such as the aforementioned Caveron Turbo Drone. Dawnstrike Vanguard, a card I mentioned for the white-green deck, is arguably even stronger here in white and red. Mana fixing. Manaixing is the bread and butter of Limited. Your decks can only be as ambitious as your mana allows for. Therefore, taking stock of the mana fixers that you open is incredibly important at a pre-release. Lander tokens are a form of mana fixing in this format that technically every color has some access to. But because there are only a few cards that are not green that make Lander tokens, they aren't as reliable as mana fixers outside of green decks. What's more, there's only one mana fixing land at low rarities in the set. Command Bridge at common. The other form of non-green mana fixing is the All Fate Scroll, a 3-cost mana rock that can be sacrificed for 7 mana to draw cards equal to the number of differently named lands you control. Slower decks will be happy to run a copy or two of the All Fate Scroll, but avoid running this card if you're in a faster deck. The takeaway from all of this is that this is just not a set where splashing is encouraged. Green decks, as always, can splash additional colors if you open enough green mana fixing, but most other decks are going to struggle to try and play more than 2 colors. So stick in 2 colors unless you're in green. Key cards to know about. Rares have always been an important part of Limited, but these days, that's even more true, since the odds of opening multiple rares in a single pack is much higher now than it once was. And if you're more likely to open extra rares, your opponents are more likely as well. But it's not just rares that you should be keeping an eye open for, as key cards come in multiple rarities. Let's talk about the best cards for each color. White. White is a particularly strong color in Edge of Eternities, as there are tons of great cards at lower rarities. My favorites at common are Banishing Light, Starfighter Pilot, and Starport Security. At uncommon, Sunstar Lightsmith bridges the gap between the double spell and +1/+1 counter archetypes flawlessly. The best white rares are Cosmogrand Zenith and Lumen Class Frigate, 2 incredibly powerful, aggressively slanted cards. In most environments, Beyond the Quiet would be up there too, as sweepers are fantastic cards in Limited. But in Edge of Eternities, white is an aggressive color, with all 4 white archetypes playing to the board, which means running a Wrath in your white deck is going to play out pretty awkwardly. It's still a good card, but not as good a card as you might expect it to be in the context of a pre-release event. Blue. Blue is another deep color in Edge of Eternities. The color is chock full of card advantage. From raw card draw like Cerebral Download and Cryogen Relic to value creatures like Codecracker Hound, whose warp ability gives you 2 bites at its Enter the Battlefield apple. Cloud Sculpt Technician is a busted card if you reliably have an artifact in play, as a 2/4 flyer is a fantastic stat line for a 3-mana card. At rare, Quantum Riddler and Manaixing, the right hand, are the 2 strongest blue cards in the set. Both provide fantastic value strapped to a nice flying body, though Manaixing certainly has the highest upside of the 2. Black. The best black common is likely to be Gravkill, an unconditional exile-based removal spell for any creature or spacecraft. Dubious Delicacy is also a valuable card at uncommon, as it's a removal spell that sticks around for an artifact in play for the blue-black deck and offers you sack fodder for the black-red deck. Elegy Acolyte and 0 Point Ballad are the 2 strongest black rares. 0 Point Ballad is a weaker Wrath than Beyond the Quiet, but it's situationally stronger in the set because blue-black is a control deck in Edge of Eternities. And even black-red and black-green decks would appreciate the flexibility that this Wrath provides. Elegy Acolyte is both a card draw engine and a token generator, and all on a 4/4 lifelinking body for only 4. Awesome card, just great. Red. There are so many great removal spells at low rarities in red. Evasive Maneuvers, Orbital Plunge, Plasma Bolt, Bombard, and Cut Propulsion cover a wide spread of good, cheap interaction. I think Plasma Bolt will be the single best common in the set, as it is very easy to make it literally just a sorcery speed lightning bolt by turning on Void. The rares in red are a bit weaker than those in other colors, but I love Rust Harvester as a little guy that pays you off for sacrificing your artifacts in black-red. Nova Hellkite is also a nice little beater that gets a hit in early for its warp cost and then comes down again later in the game. The best rare in red is probably Memorial Vault. which is a stone-cold bomb in black-red, but sadly doesn't have much of a home in the other red color pairs. Green. Galactic Wayfarer is the strongest common in green, and stands beside Plasma Bolt as one of the very best commons in the entire set. A 3/3 for 3 that creates a lander token is just an incredible amount of value at an important spot on the curve. At uncommon, Melt Strider Eulogist is another 3 mana 3/3 that provides exceptional value. Be sure to get a +1/+1 counter on this card as soon as you can once it's in play, as it's going to be a lightning rod for your opponent's removal. The strongest green rare is Ouroboros, a ridiculous stat booster for the whole team that will snowball incredibly hard if your opponent can't remove it right away. Ouroboros is a contender for the strongest overall card in this set, though its vulnerability to being killed immediately before you enter combat does mitigate its strength ever so slightly. Might Form Harmonizer is also a great payoff for all the lander tokens in the set. Multicolor. While this video is more focused on your pre-release experience, I do have to say that there aren't a ton of multicolor rares that I'd recommend first picking if you're playing in an Edge of Eternities draft, as the color restriction involved with first picking a gold card is even more prominent in a set with this little fixing. In pre-release though, you don't need to worry about that. Keep an eye out for these multicolor rares when you're opening your packs. Singularity Rupture is a ridiculous wrath at 6 mana that doesn't just clear the board, but also sets your opponent up to lose to decking out. Mutinous Massacre does a similar thing, killing half the board and stealing the other half for a turn, making for a huge attack out of nowhere that leaves your opponent decimated on resources. Sammy, Wildcat Captain, is a phenomenal beater that also does a great job on defense. It's an expensive card, but it does make up for that mana cost with the cost reduction it provides your other spells. Finally, Deandrine Synthesis Amalgam is a phenomenal card in white-green, which is my favorite color pair in the format going into Edge of Eternities pre-release. Colorless. There are multiple colorless bombs in Edge of Eternities. Now, in draft, these bombs are the opposite from multicolor bombs, in that taking them leaves you even more open than taking a strong monocolored card. In pre-release, the flexibility is also a nice bonus, as you can basically guarantee that you'll get to run these cards if you open them. Tezzeret Cruel Captain, the face card of this set, is a ridiculous bomb that ultimates quickly, and when it does, you're guaranteed to win the game if you don't die to your opponent's aggression. The end stone looks like it's expensive and has a painful downside, but it's still a very, very good card. Deceptively, you're actually more likely to kill yourself by decking than you are by combat damage, since the second ability keeps you back at 10 life at the end of each of your turns. If you draft the end stone, make sure you run removal even more than you otherwise would. And don't forget that you need enough potent win cons that you can kill your opponent before the end stone kills you one way or another. Special guests. In a nice change of pace, the special guests you could pull in Edge of Eternities aren't likely to have much impact on the limited metagame, as none of them are very well suited to limited. Robe of Stars will be decent in white decks with creatures worth protecting, and Nexus of Fate might be a good top-end card in blue-green or blue-black decks. And of course, green has enough good creatures that are worth tutoring for to make Green Sun Zenith a good inclusion in most green decks. But the rest are probably not worth including in your deck, even if you're already in their colors. Okay, with all that being said, what deck did I build with my sealed pool? As you can see, I ended up going with a white-black sacrifice deck that is heavy on removal. Looking at my uncommons is what guided me in this direction, as I quickly noticed I had both Umbral Caller's Zealot and Susarian Voidborn, 2 black creatures that heavily enable and reward a sacrifice strategy. I even got a copy of another great black uncommon for this in the card Timeline color, which is a small recursive threat which is easy sacrifice fodder. When I looked at the white cards in my pool, I noticed a plethora of removal. Emergency Eject, Banishing Light, Radiant Strike, and Beyond the Quiet are all premium pieces of removal. This made white stand out as the strongest color to pair with my black sacrifice cards. Beyond that, I tried to focus on small creatures and artifacts that would play nicely with my existing sack strategy. The 2 copies of Virus Beetle are quite nice additions because they have the powerful Enter the Battlefield ability of forcing your opponent to discard. And then, after they have done their job, they are free to be sacrificed to my Zealot. Thanks for doing your part, Virus Beetle! The top end of the deck has cards like Peregrine Beckoner, Auxiliary Boosters, and Monoist Circuit Feeder. These are powerful and/or evasive threats that are sure to carry me to victory. But that's just how I would have built this pool. Take a look again at every card I pulled in this pool via the link in this video description and tell me how you would have built it. Perhaps a Dimir control list? Maybe Boros aggro? Or maybe you just throw together a deck that I didn't even consider. That's the magic of pre-release after all. You get to build your deck the way you want it. And there you have it. Everything you need to know to succeed at your local pre-release for Edge of Eternities. I'm not kidding when I say that pre-release events are some of my absolute favorite ways to play Magic the Gathering. If you haven't been to one before, I highly recommend you take the opportunity to attend your first pre-release with Edge of Eternities. Remember, I have a whole video guide for people brand new to pre-release and sealed events. Check this out or maybe show it to your friends if they're attending their first pre-release. And if you want to watch me pre-release with my friends, then you can check out the newest episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where I pre-release with Aaron Hansen of Game Grumps, Jimmy Wong of the Command Zone and Game Nights, and Voxy of... What does Voxy do? Whatever it is, it's have fun on Shuffle Up and Play. Be sure to check those 2 videos out here by clicking on the I, and I hope very much you have a wonderful experience at your pre-release.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
We're playing Magic the Gathering, and we're going to be drawing a lot of cards because we've got Nathan from Drawfee.
Hi, I'm Nathan from Drawfee.
You would make a really cool Sphinx.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would answer your riddles.
Opposition agent is gay?
She is to me.
No, I'm not up to date on the lore.
I've been trying this whole time.
I thought it was Hull
Do I
Creature.
get them or not?
A dream trawler.
Oh yeah, you're having limited flashbacks.
I'm just a legitimate business person.
So I'm gonna swing with Prosh at Nathan. You're gonna counter me
If you
because
had
you can't
not-
do it in real life?
Remove your card.
They're such rotund animals.
What's your deck called?
Do I have to say it?
You named it.
Warm piss.